Good evening and welcome to the Kirkland Alliance of Neighborhoods presentation of the state of the city. We thank you all for coming out tonight. My name is Nahon. I'm co-chair of the Kirkland Alliance of Neighborhoods. Our other co-chair, Lisa McConnell, is at the Transportation Commission this evening. I want to recognize those who are in the audience here who are part of the Kirkland Alliance of Neighborhoods. So if you are a neighborhood association chair or CAN rep, could you just briefly stand up so we can recognize you? Yeah, there you go. All right. Yeah. Kirkland neighborhoods are one of the best ways to get to know your community and to get to know your city and to get involved and to just to know what's happening down the street from you or around the corner. The Kirkland Alliance of Neighborhoods meets every month on the second Wednesday here in this room at 7 o'clock. And most neighborhood associations meet either every other month or every month, and you can find out more about that on the city's website. A bit of brief housekeeping this evening. We're going to go directly into the mayor's and city manager's remarks. After that, there will be questions and answers, so they'll take Q&A after that. So that everyone has a chance to speak. Kari Page and Marie Stake will be passing the microphone. I will ask you to keep your question to questions so instead of speeches. And if you go long, we will use the authority of the floor to move on. We will end at about 9 o'clock. I do want to recognize some others who are here this evening. I saw Council Member Dave Asher is here. I saw Council Member Toby Nixon. Any other council members here that I missed? And we have County Council Member Jane Haig is with us this evening. I recognize her. I also want to give a special thanks to somebody who I just can't thank enough, and that's Kari Page, who is our staff liaison, who just does so much for neighborhoods in the city of Kirkland. So, thank you. And also Marie Stake, who's here helping this evening and has done a lot of publicity to help get everyone here tonight. And with that, we're here to have you hear from Mayor Amy Walen and City Manager Kirk Triplett. They have very lengthy resumes, just to tell you that they know a lot about what's going on in the city, and there's a lot going on in the city to share with you. And so without further ado, I'm sure, Amy, are you going first? Amy's going first. Mayor Amy Walen.
So good evening, everyone. This event has grown a lot since last year. I think we have about 5 times the attendance as the previous year. So great job to CAN and your leadership. I really, really appreciate the invitation to speak to you. So can you hear me? No. You cannot hear me.
How about this one on the side?
Is this one better?
Yeah.
Okay. I can't wing the state of the city, so I have prepared remarks. So I'll try to speak into the microphone and read clearly. I would like to also appreciate the fact that Councilmember Jane Haig is here. Thank you so much for being here with us, and to acknowledge my colleagues on the City Council, but also to acknowledge the members of our boards and commissions. Kirkland wouldn't be what it is without the people who serve on the Planning Commission. The Transportation Commission, I think, is meeting right now. The Park Board, the Salary Commission. There are a number of boards and commissions that inform our work. We have a youth council and a senior council. So if you would just raise your hand if you are a member of one of those boards and commissions or have ever been on one of those boards and commissions. Thank you very much for your service. And I'd also like to, you're going to hear from him, but recognize Mr. Triplett, our esteemed city manager who takes our hopes and dreams and turns them into reality. So, good evening. I'm privileged and honored to be your mayor and to be here to speak to you tonight. I can't believe a year has passed since I last stood before you, and what a year it has been. That's why I'm excited to deliver the mayor's annual State of the City address. First, on behalf of the council, let me thank each and every one of you for being an engaged, active member of our community. You raised your hands. Most of the people in this room raised their hands as far as being involved in CAN or a board and commission and just being a very engaged citizens. Kirkland is a very special place, and your involvement is what makes it that way and keeps it that way. The foundation of our community rests on 3 pillars: engaged neighborhoods, decisive, responsive city government, and flourishing businesses. The council is committed to keeping you proud of your hometown, a beautiful place to work, play, and raise a family. Sir Walter Scott famously said, "Look back and smile of perils past." To me, this means that remembering the hardships of yesterday helps us celebrate the blessings of today and look forward to the triumphs of tomorrow. Last year, we looked back at Kirkland's escape from the perils of the Great Recession. Not so long ago, I want to remind you of the difficulties that we faced. So today, we're going to look back and smile at performances past. In 2014, I told you that the state of the city was poised to be a regional force to be reckoned with our newly annexed size, to boldly tackle the big issues and the big ideas with renewed economic strength, poised to seize the opportunities before us. The opportunities I highlighted were ambitious and bold, and I'm proud to say that the city has performed. One of our most important tasks was crafting a fiscally disciplined budget. A conservative budget invests in infrastructure, saves for the future, and pays for ongoing expense out of dependable revenue. A surging economy with almost 1,200 residential units and over 430,000 square feet of commercial and office projects in the pipeline made that task easier. In December, the council unanimously adopted a balanced budget for 2015-16 based on our community's priorities that fully funds services while preparing for the expiration of the annexation sales tax credit. Unlike some of our neighboring cities, we accomplished this without raising B&O tax, head taxes, utility taxes, or property taxes. And for the 3rd consecutive biennium, we're making significant contributions to our reserves. We added $5.3 million to rainy day and contingency accounts, and another $1.65 million to our savings accounts for our infrastructure. This past December, Standard & Poor's affirmed Kirkland's AAA credit rating. I'd like to share some of the comments that Standard & Poor's made about us. We consider the city's financial management practices strong. In our opinion, Kirkland's budgetary flexibility is very strong. Kirkland has very strong liquidity, and our debt and contingency profile is very strong. Finally, we view Kirkland's management conditions as very strong, and we consider Kirkland's economy very strong. So, my colleagues and friends, it shouldn't surprise you when I tell you that this year the state of the city is strong. But keeping Kirkland strong requires more than financial stewardship. It takes leadership. The council took critical actions in 2014 to protect and enhance our quality of life. Every council member played a prominent role on the regional stage on behalf of Kirkland. Deputy Mayor Penny Sweet is passionate about her work on regional water and emergency management and attacks it with gusto. Councilmember Doreen Marchioni is the conscience of the Committee to End Homelessness, inspiring them to work harder and achieve more while reminding them that the East Side is the leader in providing housing for families in need. Councilmember Dave Asher is here as chair of our legislative committee, and through his work throughout this county and in Olympia, has been a tireless advocate for transportation and transit to serve Kirkland and the region. Councilmember Toby Nixon, also here tonight, is our valued voice on regional law, safety, and justice, and is the authority on open government. Councilmember Shelley Kloba has been a champion for women and children through her work against domestic violence and for human services. Councilmember Jay Arnold works to protect people and property from flooding and to improve rivers and streams on the Water Resource Inventory Council, and serves as our regional representative for our portion of the rail corridor. This is just a peek into their activities. You can make this a full-time job. There is so much more that they do, and I honor all of their work. It's not only your council that's on the road. Our city manager and his team have brought Kirkland to the forefront of critical initiatives, such as affordable housing and emergency services. Mr. Triplett's work developing the next generation of the 911 system is but one example of how more and more Kirkland's is the voice that is heard, the opinion that is sought. Our City Hall team are in leadership and in public service around the state. Together, your council members and your government are a formidable, respected, and effective voice in the region that ensures Kirkland is always at the table when decisions are made and funds are allocated. Back home, as always, our top priority is the safety of our community. In 2014, we completed and opened the Kirkland Justice Center and accomplished key elements of our fire strategic plan. There's more work to be done, including a new North End fire station to reduce response times. We've invested in firefighters, in police, and in the state-of-the-art equipment that they need to be effective. We must keep our people safe, but we must also serve them well. To that end, the council funded a customer service initiative that used lean management principles to recommend renovations to City Hall to better serve with more modern, flexible space, and a customer service coordinator to provide concierge-like service as you enter our doors. And in related efforts, we made great progress in simplifying our zoning code and completing our development services plan. We've set aside over $1 million in development fees to create a new one-stop shop permit center to better serve our customers. We energized our neighborhoods. We asked our neighborhood associations, you all, to lead the charge in selecting local safety projects, to get input for the 2035 comprehensive plan, to certify our residents in emergency preparedness through the CERT program, and to reach our citizens for their input into policies under consideration about all kinds of subjects. Our residents have developed an elegant vision for our community that Kirkland will be green, livable, walkable, sustainable, connected. As a down payment on that vision, we adopted the Walkable Kirkland Initiative, which more than doubles the amount of money that will be invested in traffic calming, sidewalks, crosswalks, flashing beacons, and school walk routes over the next 6 years to improve bike and pedestrian safety. We're excited about connecting our neighborhoods with the Cross Kirkland Corridor as we approved its master plan and completed the interim trail. We increased our contributions to human services and to affordable housing efforts, keeping our community a responsible, compassionate place that we can be proud of and where our children will want to raise their families. Once again, we partnered with our employees to keep the cost of government sustainable by creating the Healthy Kirkland Initiative. This trailblazing, consumer-driven program is something I'm very proud to be a part of. It's an innovative public-private partnership that puts us on the leading edge of healthcare reform. I go out and about in the cities, and they all want to know what we're doing. This is going to become a model, I think. It combines an educated and empowered workforce with a high-deductible plan and a medical clinic. Our plan will not only keep our employees and their families healthy while slowing the rise of benefit costs, it will become the model that other communities look to in addressing the looming challenge. That's leadership. Perhaps most thrilling of all, we finally saw progress on the redevelopments of Park Place and the Totem Lake Mall. Mr. Triplett's going to tell you more about that. Since last fall, the new Park Place partnership of Prudential and Talon has been meeting with our staff, with you all, with business groups to share their exciting vision for a retail, office, and residential project that is less dense and more Kirkland. The council has also received a presentation from CenterCal Properties, one of the new owners of the mall, Totem Lake Mall. Their preliminary concept is for a high-quality, pedestrian-focused retail center that will become a true community gathering place. Economic recovery, and together with the table that we have set, and they have come. These projects are economic game changers for Kirkland, and this council will ensure that they're successful. 2014 was a year of performance, of major accomplishments for nearly every aspect of our community. Our neighborhoods were engaged, our government solved problems, and our businesses flourished. Money Magazine listed Kirkland as the 5th best place to live in America. That's an accolade that all of us and those who came before us earned, and it's one worth celebrating. But as the poet Percy Shelley warns, nothing wilts faster than laurels that have been rested upon. Are you proud of me quoting poetry? This government will not rest on its laurels. In fact, this is the time for action, from strength to action. As many of you know, I'm proud to be a Ford dealer. Ford's vision is to go further. Oh, Councilmember Dabowski's here as well, from the King County Council. Hello, Councilmember. Thank you for being here. Ford's vision is to go further, and going further in 2015 is exactly what the city needs to do to protect and enhance our quality of life. We must go further with decisive, responsive government because some challenging choices and opportunities face us in 2015. We must go further and take whatever city action is necessary to authorize Park Place and Totem Lake Mall redevelopments. We must go further and demand that our state legislators take action to complete the 520 bridge, to build the I-405 ramps that serve Totem Lake, and to expand road and transit capacity. We must go further and complete the City Hall remodel on time and on budget. We must go further and improve downtown parking. The city has produced a draft list of options for discussion. I don't know if it's been before CAN yet, but if it hasn't, it will be. The community must now help us decide what to prioritize, and then we must act. We must go further and ask the public if they wish to approve the Aquatic Recreation and Community Center that a city of 82,000 people and 7 miles of shoreline deserves. The full council will discuss this issue in 2015, but I believe that if we act now, we have an exciting opportunity to use the ARC, as we're calling it, as a catalyst for economic growth in Totem Lake. And finally, we must go further in making strategic infrastructure investments that reinforce our priorities. We must complete the Park Lane and 85th Street projects to bolster 2 of our most important business centers. In 2015, this council will allocate tens of millions of dollars to streets, parks, and utility projects over the next 6 years. Our money, state money, federal money, we're going for all of it. We must get these projects right, and we must use them to facilitate economic growth and deliver our vision for Kirkland in 2035. If we can achieve these tasks in 2015, then maybe we can even go further up Money Magazine's ladder of success. After all, there are still 4 rungs above us left to climb. As your mayor, I pledge to go further until we reach the very top, and the rest of the nation accepts what we already know, that Kirkland is truly the best place to live in America. Thank you. So Mr. Triplett is going to walk you through our work plan, and I think then the 2 of us will take questions.
All right. Thank you, Madam Mayor. There are some seats in front if anyone would like to join us up here. It's not like church. We won't ask you for anything.
Well, we'll hold you to that.
That's right. So it's a great privilege to be here. I really want to thank CAN, Nahon in particular, but all the members of CAN who have facilitated this. It's a wonderful opportunity to come and give a similar talk to the neighborhoods that we have traditionally done with the Chamber of Commerce. So the mayor gave a very eloquent speech that covered the majority of things that are going to be on our plate. So what I'm going to do is highlight a few, and then I think really see where you're all interested in going, because each one of these topics that we talked about are large, and we could probably spend an hour on each of them. So I really want this to be your time and to follow what you guys want to talk about. So as I think many of you know, what we've done since 2011 is the city has adopted a city work program. And it's really somewhere in the neighborhood of 10 to 12 major initiatives that really guides the political and financial work of the city on behalf of the citizens. And we just recently had a council retreat last Friday. Boy, time goes fast. Yeah. And we had an opportunity to look at and refine what some of those items are. And so I'm just going to highlight them fairly quickly, and then I'm going to open it up for questions. The mayor touched on a lot of them, but 2015, one of our biggest tasks is to finish what we're calling our Kirkland 2035 processes. So we're going to try to adopt our transportation master plan later this year, as well as our comprehensive plan update, which is a huge work item for the Planning Commission, Transportation Commission. They've actually met more times than the City Council has in the last 2 years, so they're doing a phenomenal job, and we are so grateful for your guys' efforts. As the mayor said, probably the other single biggest conversation that's going to be critical to our future is the capital budget discussion that we're going to have. So traditionally, when we adopt the budget, which we did last December, we also adopt our major capital update with it. But because we were having so many comprehensive plan update discussions and new parks and open space plans and transportation plans, we actually pushed that off a year. And now we're pushing it off to this year. So we have a true opportunity to use it to implement the vision that the city has given us, the vision of a livable, walkable, green, sustainable, connected Kirkland. And so for the first probably 6 months of that, the staff is going to be working to try to refine it, working with our commissions, and then we're going to be taking it to the city council in July. The council is going to talk about it through July, August, September, October, November, and we hope to adopt it at the end of the year. But we're really going to be looking for neighborhood involvement, community involvement, stakeholder involvement throughout the process. So we're in the process of putting together a big outreach program around that capital project discussion, and you'll be hearing a lot more about that in the coming months. So those are the really big issues. As the mayor said, one of the, I think, most passionate issue is downtown parking and right-size parking. And so we're going to have a very robust discussion of that in the next couple of months. We are definitely looking for ideas about how to make things better. We have some resource to bring into play, but we're really looking for specific, tangible, short-term actions that we can take that can make things better now, as well as long-term partnerships with places like Park Place that we can maybe bring new supply into the game a little bit farther from downtown. And the last thing that I'll cover before I just sort of turn it over to all of you is we are really going to be focused this year on Sound Transit 3, which is an issue that wasn't quite right for the mayor's speech earlier this year. So I think most of you know Sound Transit is working with the state legislature to try to get new revenue sources for a potential ballot measure in 2016. Kirkland supports that effort. That's on our official legislative agenda. But Kirkland has a designated urban center in Totem Lake, and we want to find a way to make sure that Totem Lake is connected to the Bellevue Light Rail System, which is currently funded and will be built by 2023. So we have an opportunity as a city and as neighborhoods to really sit down with the Sound Transit Board and make sure that if there is a ballot measure that's put together that's going to go to the ballot in 2016, that ballot measure does need to serve Kirkland. It needs to provide a connection from our urban center to the light rail line in Bellevue. And there may be a wide variety of ways that may happen. It could happen along the Cross-Kirkland corridor. It might happen with bus rapid transit on the HOV lanes on 405. We're pretty open to how it happens. We just want to make sure that it does happen. So that's going to be another major regional focus of the city at the time. So again, I could talk about all of these, but what I want to do is, now that you've sort of heard a macro list, we want to make sure you have an opportunity to answer any questions that you might have on these topics or any other topics.
We're going to
Oh,
put
they're
Bill
taking the
Donahue.
mics.
Taking the mics.
Would you care to join me, Madam Mayor?
I'm not taking this heat alone. Is that what you did?
The boss.
So we did learn from Phil Donahue never to give up the microphone, so don't take offense. I'm sure you all have a lot of questions, but we want to make sure we get to as many as we can. So we will have the mayor call on you, and we'll run to you.
Okay, raise your hand. Question. Yes, ma'am.
Okay,
If you
you
could
were
ask your
talking
question.
about,
We're videotaping, so if you could ask.
the question is, why do we need another fire station in Kirkland, North Kirkland? Well, when we already have two. One unmanned.
So that's a very complicated subject. So I'll try to give you the high road version of it. When Kirkland annexed the areas of North Finhill, Juanita, and Kingsgate, we took over an area that was currently served by Fire District 41. And Fire District 41 had 3 commissioners, one of which is Councilmember Toby Dixon, who's now on the Kirkland City Council. And Fire District 41 was trying to site one consolidated station in Finhill to provide services to Finhill. It looked like they weren't going to be able to make it before they went away. When annexation occurs, the fire district dissolves. And so the city stepped up, and we spent the last 2 months of the existence of Fire District 41 basically reaching an interlocal agreement with them that the city would take over, trying to site and build that facility. So we passed an interlocal agreement. Fire District 41 went away, and it became the city's obligation to go ahead and fulfill that commitment. Right after that, we then decided that we really needed to look at the entire north end, and not just Finhill, but look at the whole area that had been previously served not by the city of Kirkland. And so we did a fairly detailed strategic plan. We then did what's called a standards of cover study to figure out what the best way to cover areas was. And what came out of that was that we really needed 3 stations in slightly different locations than we have today. So The Fire Station 25 on Holmes Point is actually fairly well located for southern Finn Hill. Fire Station 27 does a really nice job currently today of covering a lot of the area, but there's kind of a gap in Juanita and there's kind of a gap in Kingsgate. And so ultimately what the plan said is we need to have a station somewhere in the Juanita area and a station somewhere more east of 405 in the Kingsgate area. So we need 3 new stations, well, 25, a new station, we need a new station in Kingsgate. So we've been trying to figure out how do we get there. We can't afford that all in one chunk. It's a costly investment to have 3 new fire stations. And so we're trying to use the money that was given to us by Fire District 41 to fulfill that commitment, but do it in a way that also builds towards the future. So that's why we're having that discussion. A lot of complicated factors around that, but I hope that sort of gives you an overview.
Yes, sir. In the back.
I don't need a microphone.
Oh, in the back.
So,
Sorry, Harvey. I should have said that.
what is a property tax base?
It's actually being recorded.
What is a property tax base of the current city of Kirkland and our 82,000 residents? Question 1. Question 2, the mayor opened the door and brought in a very large elephant, and that is, she said Ark and Totem Lake in the same question, or in the same statement. So last I heard, that Totem Lake wasn't part of the site selection at this time. So where are we? And we just got a nice fancy brochure that showed it being on the lake, which certainly suggested Juanita Beach Park.
Do you want to start?
Sure. So, well, you're going to take the property tax base.
Well, I was hoping you knew that one.
As far as the ARC, for, I think, people in this room no longer, more than I, how long an ARC has been on our community's wish list. And the Juanita High School pool is going to be closing. The failure of their bond kind of made the timeline uncertain. But when it looked like that was imminent, we sort of set our park board, our community advisory group, to looking at where we should site an ARC, what it should look like, what components it should have. And so they've been sort of working on this, I think, in detail, and we have some park board members here, for quite a long time now. So they've looked at our first choice, of course, would be publicly owned land, right? Because if we have to go buy, how many acres does it take? 11?
7 to 9.
7 to 9 acres. It's expensive. Land in Kirkland's not getting any cheaper. So that was the focus, I think, initially, is do we have any publicly owned land we can use? So through that process, they came up with North Kirkland Community Center, replacing that, building the ARC there. All those community activities would happen there. Or Juanita Beach Park, with the idea that, it has beautiful access to the lake, and it's got some park facilities there, and there's some space there. We had some reaction to that wasn't super positive, but we haven't got to a siting decision yet. The park board is still kind of grinding through. We identified some alternate sites, some Totem Lake sites. We're hopeful that the mall owners might be interested in partnering with us around. We already own the Yuppie Pond site, so we're thinking that maybe in partnership with them, that could be a wonderful amenity that would provide value to their development and to our citizens. So the door's not closed. We're still working on it, and I have been concerned to see this, you're going to put it at Juanita Beach Park, save Juanita Beach Park. We're not there yet. It's still under consideration. There's many, many decisions yet to be made about the location of the ARC. So I believe that the park board is having another meeting, and then they're going to give us a report in March, and but we're still looking at actually a couple of sites in Totem Lake, and what about Snyder's Corner, and what about partnering with Redmond, and what about Bellevue? We're working all of those angles.
Property tax base.
Property tax base.
I don't actually know that off the top of my head. I'll be honest with that. I should. But Toby's probably looking it up, I'm guessing.
No, well, I was going to take the exact number down to the dollar, but I just looked it up, and it's about $18 billion.
18 million, okay.
That was a day or two ago. That was.
And our cents per thousand is about $1.47 cents per thousand is what the city property tax is assessed in Kirkland residents.
Okay, other questions or comments for us? Questions? Yes, ma'am.
I just had a question on the state of the lease that the Goodwill has at the Albertson Center, which has been empty a long time, and Rite Aid next door. Is there a plan, and a lease, and all that? We're in the Juanita neighborhood. We're just wondering. We've kind of had our own little Totem Lake Mall sitting there for a while.
Yeah, that's a great question. We've gotten a lot of questions about, essentially what is the city's role in any of those decisions, and there actually isn't one, other than, potential zoning changes you could think about at some time. But we don't control either of those sites. We don't make the decisions about what goes into those sites. We just say whether it's allowed in our zoning code or not. So I know there's been some concern expressed about the Goodwill that's going in there. Goodwill is a allowed retail use. It's a retail facility, and so there really wasn't a role for the city in that in any particular way, other than assessing the tenant improvements and doing our normal permitting process. We have identified that area as a place we all want to see new development and redevelopment. So it's been a place where there's a lot of potential, and the potential just hasn't happened, and none of us are totally sure why. We have also looked at it as a potential location for the new fire station. We've looked at two options in and around that area. One is potentially in front of the Rite Aid in the parking lot. Another is the church site across the street from Juanita Elementary School. So those are two spaces we're still sort of looking at. But no decision's been made on that either. So I think what we'd all like to see is we'd like to see it redevelop in more of a Juanita Village type development. And I think once we get through the Totem Lake and Park Place things, those are the kind of places we want to turn our attention to, areas like that Albertson site, areas like the Houghton Everest Shopping Center, and really see what's that next stage that the community wants to see in those locations. So we want to see something good happen there.
I'm sorry, I just have another question about this fire station. What do we do with the fire station on 84th that is unmanned?
The fire station 24?
Is that what it was?
All the way up to the top?
Yeah,
So,
on 84th Street.
We would be selling that, theoretically.
Selling it. What do you do with 27?
If we get to the point where we'd site the two new facilities, we would probably sell 27 as well, or redevelop it or do something for kind of a public purpose.
To add on to one of them and put the other one on the other side of the freeway.
That's an option. I mean, one of the things we're looking at is you always have to try to balance cost versus response times. And that's a challenge for all fire stations everywhere, which is you want them to be within about 4-minute travel time of everyone in your city. And the current station 27 doesn't get to everywhere in the north end in 4 minutes. So it's a great station that covers a lot, but there are some places in Kingsgate it doesn't reach. There are some places in Finn Hill it doesn't reach. Station 25 also doesn't quite get to some places. So it's not a question of that currently there isn't great service. It's a question of ultimately, if you could have the system that you want to have when you're done, where should everything be located? And then you'd want to have one more east in Kingsgate, one more sort of central in Juanita, and then the fire station 25. But figuring out how to get there, that's something that we're continuing to work on with the community, with the council.
Thank you very much.
I saw this lady. Yes, ma'am.
Yes, Jean Large. Oh, you're going to hold it. Yes, thank you. Mayor Walen, I was delighted to see in your list of issues that were priorities in 2014 that affordable housing was on that list. I did not hear it as we talked about challenges for 2015, and I do think that part of a livable, viable, vibrant city is to have affordable housing for lots of different people. Employees of the city, employees of the businesses that are here need to live as close to where they work as possible. If they don't, of course, we have all sorts of issues, including transportation and parking and all those other things. So where is it in the long-term plan and the short-term plan? And I have been going to the comprehensive plan meetings and the planning, and I'm aware of some of that, but I don't hear a bigger, more important function around that.
Thank you very much for saying that. That's something I feel really passionately about, too. As Kirkland becomes more and more expensive, how can we provide housing for our workforce, but also so that longtime Kirkland residents aren't priced out of the market? So being able to age in your hometown is extremely important. And I do think speaking for myself, that government action is something that it can be helpful, that we can provide incentives. So we have some ideas, and I'm going to turn this over to Mr. Triplett because he's been serving on the board of a regional coalition for housing, ARCH, and he has some wonderful ideas, I think. We've done a lot of programs in our planning for requiring or providing tax exemptions for building a component of affordable housing that's dedicated to affordable housing in perpetuity. I think, in fact, Kirkland's one of the models for that kind of activity. And it's very much at the forefront of all of our minds. We think that it's, I think that I speak for all of us when we think that the transit-oriented development that we did at South Kirkland could be done at other locations. And we're kind of going to be exploring that. But I guess Mr. Triplett has a lot of technical knowledge about this, and I'll let let him fill you in on our plans.
Well, the mayor got most of it. I actually was remiss in not mentioning that as one of the items. When we were at the council retreat, the council actually asked that one of the things we add to the work program was some sort of affordable housing goal, and to make sure that in 15-16 we had some pretty aggressive work towards that. We are looking, as the mayor said, at the Houghton Park and Ride and the Kingsgate Park and Ride as potential partnerships where we might see some development. Those are both owned by the state, so we've had conversations with the state regional director for WashDOT, but we haven't had a chance to yet get up to the decision makers, which is the governor and the Secretary of Transportation, but that's one of our next stops, is we want to have a conversation with them. So obviously that takes money, so we're going to have that conversation as well. But we think there's an opportunity to use both of those to not just enhance parking for commuters, but also to build more affordable housing around there. And then finally, up in Totem Lake area by the current Francis Village, there is another section of property that's owned by Imagine Housing, and that's a place that's sited for more probably senior housing or some sort of low-income housing. And the city council's been having a conversation about really maximizing that and possibly combining it with something like a women's shelter or something so that we can really hit an area that hasn't really been well served in Kirkland. So,
do we have any preservation policies?
Not really. So, but to the mayor's point, I would say this: if you go to the Kirkland website under our housing section, the ARCH, which is a regional coalition for housing that I serve on behalf of the council, we did a work program, a score chart of what every city had done for affordable housing, what kind of incentives had we built in, how was our zoning, all of those things. And what we were all really proud of is that Kirkland had actually done all the most. We'd used all the tools in the toolkit. And so we're far more progressive than a lot of our neighbors about all of the actions that we're taking. But we're in pretty good company. Bellevue and Redmond are also very aggressive about it. So it's been a nice East Side partnership.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Hi.
Hi.
I'll be nice.
Yes.
I'm going to use your own speeches. I believe the mayor talked about the cost of land here today. Since I've lived since 1976, I've lived on Northeast 128th Place. Since I've lived there, you've taken away one fire station. Mm-hmm. Now you're going to take away another fire station, and you're going to build one way over there somewhere else. What I don't understand is, if I was to sell my house, if I wanted something better, I'd remodel my house and stay where it is, rather than pay the huge cost of buying the property and building a brand new building. And I don't know why we're not thinking about remodeling those things and bringing them up to par, and don't mess with what's good.
Well, the answer again is that's one viable option, right? And the current fire stations do provide great service to Kirkland. But what our analysis has shown is it doesn't reach everywhere. So there's still gaps. And I guess the question for the community is, are we okay with those gaps? I mean, if you don't live in them, you're probably happy with the gaps, right? Because don't build a fire station, don't spend the money, you're fine. But if you live in the gap, you probably have a different opinion. So, it's not a question of not recognize the value of what we have. It's a question of the city council has always prioritized public safety and doing even better. And we know from the time we took over the new neighborhoods that there have been areas that need more service and better service. And the whole reason the city council did a strategic plan and a standard of cover study was to say, what are the steps that are necessary to provide equal coverage to everybody. And then how do we get there? Now, it's a really big price tag, and it's going to take many years to get there, tens of millions of dollars. So we don't have an answer out of the gate, but just standing pat, I think, is something that at least this council has said they're not willing to do. They want to make progress towards improving service for everybody. So, we have some disagreements about how the best way to do that is and what the first step in doing that is, but I think we all share the same goal of providing the same level of excellent service to everybody in the North End and everybody in all of Kirkland. And that will eventually take movement in where our current stations are sited. When and how that happens, that's something we're still working out.
Other questions? What? No other questions? Yes, ma'am, please.
When the ARC eventually gets built, and you've said you're going to close the North Kirkland Community Center, what will happen with that building?
No, what I said was that one of the sites that the Park Board had examined was the North Kirkland Community Center. So the decision would be whether to build the ARC at that site, in which case all the programs would go into the ARC. But I think, the Park Board had concerns about that site. The neighbors had concerns about that site. I'm not sure if I'm not even sure if that site is rising to the top of their consideration anymore. So I personally thought, well, if we could make it a low-profile, beautiful building, it would replace the building that's there. That's just me, but there's 7 of us and a lot of Park Board members that have differing opinions. This is a huge investment for our community. We're going to have to go to the ballot and ask people, do you want to have this additional level of service? And if you do, how much do you want to spend on it? And it's a big price tag. And publicly owned land is publicly owned, and privately owned land adds, $10 million to the cost of the project, and that's going to feed into everybody's property tax bill. So we're a little bit not quite there yet on the actual location. So stay tuned, and please, I would encourage you to reach out to the Park Board. They're here. And Sue, raise your hand. Park Board, raise your hand, Sue Ellen. And Sue Keller's here, the 2 Sues.
That's right.
They'd love to hear your comments. I also do want to just take this moment to again point out that our council member, King County council members, these people make big decisions that affect all of us about public health and solid waste and all the regional services that we have from the county, animal services. I don't even know. They do a lot of important stuff. Metro. They're here. And this is a great opportunity for you to meet them, and I just really appreciate them being here. So, Jane, would you just stand for a moment so everybody can see you? And Rod Dembowski, please introduce yourselves to them. They do incredible work for our city. They do amazing work for our city. Other questions? Comments? Mr. Triplett has.
This just in. So we were off. It's a B, not an M. So it's $18,453,587,000.
Zero.
Is the assessed value of Kirkland.
Give one more here.
He has a question.
Oh, B. Yes, please.
I think B wants to go last.
Okay.
I just had a comment. I loved what you said about Totem Lake and partnering with them, because between the young people and the seniors and getting transit involved there and an ARC center and building some retail, that sounds really good to me. So I just wanted to share that with anybody that was listening.
I really appreciate that. I mean, I think the whole University Village feel at Totem Lake with community center would be amazing. Yeah. Do you want to say something?
Oh, sorry.
John?
Hello. So I see Rod and Jane are here, and we've taken, I know, Amy, you and Rod out to, Finn Hill has out to this beautiful piece of property above Juanita that's forested and that borders the Juanita Heights Park, and we're actively working to try to preserve that 9-acre parcel or parcels of land, and really looking for some partnership through the county and the city on how to preserve that area. I was wondering if there's been any progress on your side, either the city or county side.
I know it's a spectacular site, and I know we asked Councilmember Dembowski to help us. I think we could probably help, but it's going to take a collaboration. So I don't know if there's been any specific movement. We've talked to a few people. You want to?
I think, as John knows, when the citizens of Kirkland passed our park levy, one of the investments of that was to be put towards acquisition of more open space. And so we had a budget, a couple $100,000 a year. We did invest, actually, the first several chunks of it up in the Finn Hill area. So unfortunately, we've shot our wad for a year or two before we can come back and look at maybe that kind of acquisition. But I know we'd love to work with the county on that and anyone else. But in a couple of years from now, those dollars will come back. There will be more capacity within the system for us to look at new open space acquisitions. Councilmember Haig.
I just wanted to say that thank you so much. So the county has a funding source called Conservation Futures, and we allocate that to an oversight group that then shares it amongst the cities for regionally significant projects. So I would encourage Kirkland to apply for CFT monies, and they're awarded on an annual basis. And I think given Councilmember Dembowski's and I commitment to Kirkland and to making sure that we've got a good park system, that you would be in good stead.
Second.
Nice. Other questions before we hand it over to B? Yes, please. Kari's very fit. She can
Thank you. So we're really excited about the Cross-Kirkland corridor and all the news that's been coming out about that. I heard you say today that you are planning to build out the sidewalk system to connect Kirkland to the Cross-Kirkland corridor, and I was wondering a little bit about those plans. In particular, we live right near the bridge. And have kind of a difficult time getting across that street because it's curved and you can't really see the cars that are coming. So I think it's kind of an unsafe spot. So is there, what's the timeline for kind of building out that connection point?
That's totally,
Okay.
That's all you. Yeah.
I assume you're talking about the second bridge up,
Kirkland.
the Kirkland Bridge up by...
It's the railroad bridge.
Okay, yeah, railroad bridge. Okay,
Yeah,
great.
okay.
Yeah. So several things are happening. That's actually part of the transportation master plan discussion. So what's happening and the capital projects discussion that I talked about earlier, those are where both of those things are going to come together, as well as the neighborhood safety program that Kari's been talking about. But not to get all wonky, but the way we're doing the transportation master plan is we're basically saying we're going to have 20-year project lists for all of our transportation modes. So one of those is sidewalks. And so we're saying we know how much money we have. We're going to say we want to accomplish this much sidewalks in the next 20 years. And then this much bike lanes and these intersections and the street maintenance. And so everything related to transportation, we're going to have a plan for all of that. How we prioritize and allocate that is actually the conversation we're going to have with the capital projects over the next 6 years. So the city council, hopefully with all of your involvement, is going to be looking at that and saying, okay, and I'll just make up a fairly close number. We'll have about $1.5 million worth of money to allocate to sidewalks a year. So where should that be allocated? And school walk routes is always a very good place. That's where we like to definitely prioritize. And the Cross-Kirkland corridor connection has come up again and again and again. And so we're definitely going to prioritize that in our thinking. But part of it is then to come out and say, okay, if we can only do so much each year, what's the best place and where should we put it? So none of those decisions are made, but there is opportunity. And I would definitely encourage you to engage in our process and engage in your neighborhood, because there's money available to make those things happen. And we're definitely aware of that challenge, and we do know about it. And we want to focus one of our sets of efforts there. In fact, I don't know, Kari, if that, I think that actually came up, didn't it, during the neighborhood safety program?
Is it the 68th Street Bridge?
No,
Is that
no,
what
it's
you're talking
the
about?
railroad bridge up in Everest, north end of Everest.
Kirkland Way, yeah, as a connection. Oh, for the traffic safety, it
Sidewalk
came
and
up.
the neighborhood safety.
Yeah, so through the neighborhood safety program, we have a process where the neighborhoods identify safety improvements for the city, and thank you to the city council, we have a $200,000 a year walkable Kirkland Kirkland initiative that goes toward the neighborhood safety program. And thank you to residents for the streets levy. We have $150,000 a year in addition to that going toward neighborhood safety projects. And one of the projects that was identified for construction in 2015, I think we have 30 project ideas that we're looking at right now, and we'll be making that decision in April. But one of those is to put in a flashing beacon at that trestle, so that when a car is headed west and going to go south on Railroad Ave, right in front of the bridge there, a light will flash to the cars coming eastbound to let them know and warn them that somebody's going to be cutting across there. Does everybody follow that? Yeah. So that's one of 30 projects we'll be looking at. Yeah.
At one of the neighborhood meetings, somebody told me about an app or an email that you could get for crime in the city. And so I get a crime report every couple of days. And it seems to me that recently there's been a lot of car thefts. And I would never have thought that would be something that was happening. You haven't spoken about anything about crime in your reports. I was just wondering if our crime is going up, staying level, or going down, because the car theft thing is kind of unnerving a little bit.
Who forgot to invite the police chief?
Moss Bay.
Right, I can say a little bit about that. We're not seeing a big increase, but car thefts has been an issue throughout the county. It's a problem in pretty much every community right now. One of the things that we hope to focus on in 15-16 is starting a police strategic plan. So we just completed one of our fire strategic plan, which led to some of the discussions we've been having about fire stations. But last year, the City Council set aside $100,000 to assess the state of our police force, and particularly called specialty units, but one of the groups that we had in the past, but we had to make as a reduction when the recession came, was a group we call a PROACT unit. And that's a focus, is sort of a little bit less than a detective and a little bit more than a patrol officer. And that unit basically sees when you have crime trends, and then they spend their time focused on trying to bring those crime trends down. So car theft would be the kind of thing that they would spend a lot of time working on. So we still have that money. We weren't able to get that done last year given everything else that was on the plate, but we've carried that money forward to 2015-16, and we're going to figure out how to do that. And then we think we'll probably see some investments in maybe the 17-18 budget. But what I can do is I can commit to getting an update from the chief on all the crime issues that we can then send out through CAN to all the neighborhoods. So, but right now, I think if the chief were here, what he'd tell you is Kirkland is very safe, and we're not seeing a huge uptick in crime. But I know that the car theft issue is a big issue throughout the whole county.
What I know, particularly since we have a couple county council members here, and because you mentioned sound transit, what can we do here, or what can our city do to get us better transit service in Kirkland? I'm very disappointed by how little we've gotten out of sound transit for our taxes. And now we're suffering, metro transit cutbacks, and it makes it, very hard to, do the sort of planning we like to have transit-oriented communities and get people out of their cars around here. Is there anything the city can do to help us there?
2 minutes. Well, first, one thing I will say on their behalf, because it needs to be said, is that first Councilmember Dombrowski and then also Councilmember Haig actually stood up and resisted the cuts that were proposed by the county executive. So they were part of the majority that said, yes, we have to take the first set, but we're going to defer the second and third sets of transit cuts. So I think we should definitely be thankful that they were there and that they were watching out for what transit service we have. However, I certainly think we can all ask them about getting even more transit service restored. I think that's certainly a legitimate conversation, but they've both been very strong advocates for transit in the Kirkland area.
So I chair on the Council of the Transportation Economy Environment Committee, and Councilmember Haig is my vice chair, and we are partners, not in crime, but in good. And without Councilmember Haig, there would have been and her leadership, there would have been 550,000 hours of transit cut in the community, a significant portion of it in the Kirkland area. So we had some up in Finn Hill with the route there on Juanita Way, but we started growing our transit system by stopping the cuts. And without Councilmember Haig, that would not have happened. On Monday, we passed out of the council what I call RTTF2, Regional Transit Task Force 2, where we'll have regional leaders. One of the things that came out of the proposed cuts last year was a realization that perhaps the formulas that we have in place and the policies we have in place are not fair and equitable throughout the region, particularly with respect to the east side, and perhaps need some updating in terms of our policies to reflect the different ways that communities need transit service. In other words, we are no longer a hub and spoke system, right, where we feed Seattle. That Kirkland needs to connect with Bellevue, needs to connect with Redmond, needs to connect with Kenmore and Woodinville. And so Councilmember Haig and I are working, frankly, every day down at the County Council, running the regional transit system to make sure that that message is conveyed to the planners and the bureaucrats, if you will, in the transit division, to make sure that they remember and become more aware of the fact that the east side is not the suburbs anymore, right? That the transit needs here are different, and that the investment that taxpayers and transit riders make into the system is significant, and that the return on that investment in terms of service needs to be commensurate with that service. So that's a high-level answer, but it is front and center on Councilmember Haig and I's radar, and I feel very fortunate to be able to work with Jane on these issues, and all of the expertise and tremendous experience that she brings to the table is invaluable. So we're happy to work more with you on that, but there's some tremendous East Side leaders that will participate in this new task force. And this year we'll be looking at making recommendations to make sure that communities like Kirkland get a fair share of transit in the future. Oh, and just today, Councilmember Asher, thank you. See, this is why she's a pro. Say something about Councilmember Asher serves on the Regional Transit Committee. And just today, as we looked at some of these policies, and not just today, but in every meeting, Dave Asher shows up and participates and is a proactive and forceful leader and a knowledgeable leader on these issues, and is making sure that those objectives and the interests of this community are carried out. So thank you, Jane. See, I'm still learning. I'm still learning. Anyway, I hope that answers it, but we're happy to get more details later.
And Glenn, I think that I'm going to quote Councilmember Asher here is, sound transit needs to be relevant to Kirkland voters. They need Kirkland to pass, and we've always been very progressive and supportive of the regional system, even if we haven't seen a lot of direct service, and they're going to be coming to us. And so we're actually setting up a series of meetings right now to say these are the things that we're going to need to get Kirkland behind a new sound transit ballot measure. So connectivity to Totem Lake, as Kurt described, service from along the 405 from Kirkland to Bellevue is one of the highest ridership areas that Sound Transit has, and we need service there. Kari, yes. Hello, sir.
Hi, Doug Ruff. Juanita is the largest in terms of population of the neighborhoods, more than twice the size of the next largest pre-annexation neighborhood. And yet we have very few parks and only one park north of 132nd. So question number one is what are the plans to gain park space and have maybe, proportionate park space or fair allocation of park space in Juanita? And I have another question. Do you want me to answer it at the same time, or do you want to tackle that first?
Give us both questions.
Okay, the second question is north of Kirkland, there between the north end of Kirkland and Bothell Way is a huge section which is all Bothell, and if, correct me if I'm wrong, there's exactly 0 fire stations in that area. That would seem to me to be a Bothell problem, and if Bothell were to solve that problem, that could potentially solve our our fire station problem for the north end. So rather than spending a huge amount of money to take Fire Station 27 and move it a little bit in order to solve our, make our 4-minute response time, maybe if Bothell and or Woodinville also has a problem in that they have a big chunk in the north end. So the point is maybe rather than spending a huge amount of money moving our fire station, maybe we could encourage Bothell and or Woodinville to solve part of our problem for them and throw maybe a little less money that way?
Yeah, I think that whenever we look at the map of Kirkland, where are the fire stations, we also look at where are the fire stations beyond our borders. And partnering with other agencies is really, really important and a great opportunity for us, I think. I mean, we've looked at joint staffing models. For all the fire guys, when there's a fire response, it's mutual aid. They all come. So they don't, they're not concerned about borders. They're concerned about helping people. So I think you bring up a really good point, and it's not lost on us. Do you want to talk a little bit more about that and maybe take the parks question? Thanks.
Sure. So take the fire station one first. So we do want to have those conversations, and we have in the past, and we probably need to have them again about, is there partnerships with North Shore? Is there partnerships with Bothell? Is there partnerships with Woodinville Fire and Rescue? One of the challenges that every community faces is it's tough to make an investment. Investment in fire service is expensive, and it's a big commitment. And so you want to make sure that investment serves your community, first and foremost, and then other communities. So it's never as simple as just deciding that you're going to do it together. There's a lot of issues that go into that, but I think that this is a good time for us to look at that again and say, is that a potentially different solution than what we've been talking about? So it's definitely something we will consider because we want to make sure that we get better service at the north end. On the park side, I think you're familiar with, we have a parks, an open space plan that's coming for the council for adoption. It's one of our Kirkland 2035 projects. And one of the things that identifies is a level of service that we want to commit to, and that's basically a park within a quarter mile of every resident. And when we've been doing our mapping analysis, we know that North Juanita is an area where we haven't met that level of service. So when the council adopts that, that will be one of the target zones for both the capital projects. Again, that discussion about what will we spend our money on, that's one of the options, as well as future levy monies to do that. So we definitely know that that's an area that needs improvement, and it's definitely one of the things we're going to be looking at in the next 6-year capital plan.
He also had a question over there too, so I'm not sure who you want to call.
Everybody hasn't helped yet.
Yeah.
So I've been a new person to the community since July, and I had a really bad experience last week. First of all, what is the response time that the police make to come to after you've done a 911 call?
I don't know the average. I can find out. It depends. To a certain extent, it depends on what the call comes in and what the issue is. So
I'll just explain, because I'm sure people
please.
will want to be aware.
Right.
Went out my back door to find a homeless guy asleep on my back doorstep. And he'd got his beer and his cigarettes and his lighter and everything, and he was just spark out, which was a big shock when you open the back door and there he is, not knowing whether he's alive, dead, how long's he been there, don't know. And then the police took like 30 minutes to get there, and I was at home on my own because my husband was at work. And then when they came, they said they knew who he was, he's a nuisance. They were trying to get him out of the Kirkland city to move to Redmond, and they lost him. And this was at noon on Thursday, and then he ended up in my backyard and is mentally ill and violent. So that was not a good experience as regards to... I didn't expect that to happen in Kirkland.
yeah, I mean, I'd certainly say that's not an acceptable outcome. So if I can maybe get your contact information afterward, what I'll do is have the police chief follow up with you on that. So
and take my phone number when you leave.
But I'm sorry that was your experience.
Yeah, it was a shock.
So we have another question over here.
All right, just a follow-up to the transportation one. It is certainly a better investment, I believe, and I've done third-grade math. as a former school teacher, that the point is that rather than be concerned about traffic density and spending a lot of money on parking, the bus transportation is an excellent investment, and if you just do the math on it, I think it's a better one. The issue I'd really like to just also put out here is, as you probably know, the price and the efficiency of solar energy has been getting much better. It's less expensive and it's more effective, and there also are some wonderful tax incentives out there now, which may not always be there. So will the city of Kirkland be taking some steps to help individuals with home-based solar, as well as having public investment in solar, where individuals such as myself, I live in a condo building and they won't let me put solar on the top of it. I'd love to help pay for solar on top of public spaces.
Okay. So at the moment, we do not have a formal program to do that. I know that that's something that when we had our council retreat, we talked about a lot of things. And one of the items that we normally get to that we didn't get a chance to get to was essentially council initiatives, things that the council members were really concerned about and cared about. And I know two members in particular, and I think probably most of the council, that was an issue that they cared about, was how do we sort of formalize a program where Kirkland can help make more localized solar power happen. So I think that's a discussion that's still yet to come. We have a second retreat in May. I'm guessing that might get raised in some of our council committees and maybe from the council itself. But we haven't caught up yet with a formalized program. We'd have to figure out what that meant and what it took. Certainly making sure that our zoning is relevant to that, but a lot of this is Puget Sound Energy and other entities. It's not just us, so it's not quite as simple as just wanting to make it happen. But I know that is an interest of some members of the council and will probably be discussed at the next retreat.
I'm glad you brought it up, because now I can mention it to my colleagues, and we'll make sure that's part of the conversation. Thank you. Johanna, and then you, sir.
I'll have to hand it to you.
Up in our north end, the new neighborhoods, we've been paying for our street lights as part of our other utilities with, I think I'm with North Shore, we pay a monthly fee for our street lights, and the rest of the city of Kirkland has their street light maintenance and electricity costs paid as part of the general fund. Is there a plan in place to start phasing in the taking over of those street lights so that we'll actually not have to continue to pay the utilities? And in addition to that, there's some spots that we need some street lights, and what process do we do to request those be put in? And right by Larry's house, there's one that was knocked down a couple months ago that's still laying on the ground that we'd like to see put up. So what can we get done in that area?
So the newly adopted budget takes care of the streetlight issue. So that will be handled effective immediately, basically.
July 1st.
July 1st. So that's that, done, check. And then the specific streetlight issue, we probably need to capture the address type information, and we can have our...
So if you go to the website and to the Public Works page, you can put in a request for a light, and you can also notify of a light that's gone down. You can also certainly contact the city manager's office.
Put the cones next to it.
Right. So I will definitely follow up on that.
It's probably in the works then.
So it should be fixed. Not all the lights are our lights. That's one of the challenges. Some of them are PSE lights and other things. So sometimes there's nuances to this, but if we know it, we'll make sure we get out there and fix it. So. And if there's requests for new lights, let us know on that too. Those are an added expense, so they are things that get assessed in the context of other things like rapid flashing beacons and other pedestrian safety issues. But we definitely want to know if people think there's a place for a light, and then we'll put it in the hopper to be evaluated.
It's the one that's laying on the side.
Yeah, no, that one. What's the address?
A very busy road.
Yeah.
So did you have another?
Slater Avenue, where it turns into 132nd, right there.
All right.
That's my neck in the woods. So you had another comment, Lori, or was that it?
No, I was going to say thank you for all you do. It was a good presentation.
Thank you. So do we have other I know you have we have a citizen that wants to have a presentation. I imagine he has some more comments. Should we turn it over?
you want to do that, or you want to wait until after? Yeah.
It's your meeting. You
Because
tell
there could
me
be
what you
questions
want to do.
No, this is actually a citizen who emailed in a question and was asked to be read at the meeting, so I thought
Okay.
we'd take that last.
Last, okay.
Unless this takes
Don't come
time
to the
to set
meeting
up,
if
you can
last
do it while we're
That's
doing this.
It wasn't me, so Oh, it must be someone from Google. Yeah.
All right.
I can't hold it, no. Yeah, I got 5 minutes. So first of all, I really want to thank Ken for allowing me to come. I asked them to get on the agenda yesterday, and they actually put me on today. So I really appreciate that. That was very kind and much appreciated. My name is Jeremy Memmi, and I'm a new resident to Kirkland. I've been here about 6 months, and happy to be, as the mayor said, the greatest city in the world. I moved into a new house, as you can see there. We built it in Kirkland, and there's my wife and I down there, and she's joined me here, and I've got a beautiful wife and just a happy life, and it's great. And there I am picking her up and bringing her into our new house. So we're very happy. We're living the life. But about a month before we finished our house, the city had passed, a variance on a noise ordinance that allowed them to do construction overnight. And so what we didn't know is when we moved in that there would be a lot of construction happening outside the house. And when I say that, it's very, very difficult to visualize. So what I've done is I've created a video to show you what it looks like and sort of what we're dealing with. So the first video is actually of my neighbor from his bedroom at 1 o'clock in the morning. And let's see if I can play this video, and maybe you can get a sense of what we have.
In the morning. This is taken from my bedroom, looking out the window. If you'd like to try sleeping through this, go ahead.
He's cutting a metal pipe there. Now, I've got some other videos that are going to come after, and these have started roughly in November, and I've got a bunch of them that I go through from my place. And just to get a sense of what the construction, what's been happening, the city says that they've been improving and making things better, but you guess, and take a look at the dates at the top there. So this is my bedroom. I'm taking this from my bedroom at around 1, 2 in the morning.
You stay up so late?
I can't sleep. Actually, I haven't slept in 3 days. It's still going on. This is on 132nd and 85th Street.
Well, it's February 5th now because it's 12:30.
So now we're in February 5th.
So we're in February 10th. Excitement here tonight. This guy's about to hit a car.
And then I've got last night. So this is what we had last night. So when we're not dealing with that, and that doesn't happen every night, but on the off nights that it's not happening, they've got a staging facility, which is right across the street. And this is actually someone's house. The city informs me that there is a single parent with 2 kids that live in that house. And so they're dealing with this. They actually get it worse than we do because we live in a newer house, and that's all happening in the front of their house. So when that's not happening, the tractors are coming, collecting stone, collecting pipes and things all night, and so we hear it regardless. So you're probably asking, okay, so we would probably contact the city and see what kind of results we can get or work out something. So we began communication in October, sent several emails, videos, sent them to the City Council, Planning Committee, Development, and City Attorney's Office. Requested information, which basically outlines that this is legal. And currently in discussions with the Washington Legislative Office because they're basically passing an ordinance on a Washington State noise ordinance. So the city has responded. They're very polite, which is great. They basically say it's for the betterment of the city. We've got a large population. It's okay if we affect a few residents in a roundabout way. They've been very inaccurate with the timeline. They said it's going to be over by now. It's not over. They're still saying it's going to be over, but the project goes for another year. They have offered us noise machines, earplugs, and a hotel room, which I assume is admitting to some of the issue here. But the problem with even the hotel room is, well, we have that staging site across, and I mean, we'd be there for 3-4 months now because it started in October. And actually, last night was so bad, and last night was the worst, that my back door was vibrating so much that it actually set our alarm off at 4 o'clock in the morning. So I wasn't sure if we had an intruder in, so I woke up at 4 o'clock in the morning and had to go downstairs with my wife and make sure that the house was actually safe, checked the security videos, and we were fine, and then replicated the issue by shaking the door. So I knew that was the issue. And so that's basically it. They told us that the noise concerns were discussed at City Council about 1 month prior to our house actually being complete. So we didn't know. We didn't get any notice. So I got 1 more minute. That's fine, because I got 1 more slide. So we were trying to figure out, okay, well, what could the city do? Maybe we could help them come up with some ideas. And we thought, okay, well, hey, is it possible to limit the work to the weekends? Maybe do it when the traffic's lower, because we know during the weekdays there's lots of businesses. Can you at least move that staging area off that front yard, right? Because that's like at least 60% of it. Hey, maybe start work at 7 p.m. and work till 12 a.m., even though that's past the noise ordinance limits. But hey, I mean, we go to sleep probably around that time. We're happy to have those discussions. Obtain a second opinion on the work. You saw those videos over those months. I mean, how many times, and I'm an electrical engineer, not a civil engineer, but I can't imagine how many times you got to keep drilling and going into the same spot. Maybe it's legit, but I really question. And our options, we've offered the city members to come stay at our house. None of them have taken the offer. I'm starting to get to know who they are. Come on. Got a nice house. Oh, we got 3 bedrooms. Come on. I could sell the house and just call it a loss, say, you know what, forget it. Let's just walk away. I've also explored some of the legal aspects as well, and the lawyers I've talked to said, yeah, you've got a great nuisance case, but do I really want to sue the city that we're living in? No, we don't want to do that. This is our community. We want to grow a family here. So just want to bring it to your attention, and then, hey, I'd be interested to know what you guys would do. So come talk to me after. Friendly guy.
There's a couple of fire stations you could go live in.
Yeah. That might be better. That actually might be better.
Oh, sorry.
Is the mayor going to?
Do you want me to say just a little bit? So I just want to say I really appreciate your presentation, and I am truly sorry for the impact this project is having on you guys and all the folks at the end of 85th. I do feel like I need to say that the challenge for the 85th Street project is it is a major arterial that serves 2 communities. We have 44,000 cars a day that go on that. So the work tears up the street now to shut the street down. So if we weren't doing it at night, we would basically be creating gridlock between Kirkland, Bellevue, Redmond, 405. It's just one of those things you struggle with in an urban area when you have to make a major infrastructure improvement and there's just no land and you have to find a way to do it. And people are impacted and we regret that they are, and we're doing everything we can to figure out a path. We're trying to get the work done as quickly as possible. Nighttime work is one of the ways it goes a lot faster, but there's no question it's terrible and it has an impact on you. But the alternatives would probably be worse. If it was daytime construction and we were shutting down 85th for Redmond and Kirkland for 6 months at a time, the impact on the community would be also equally horrible for lots of people. So I know that doesn't help, but it's not that we aren't aware or that we want to have that impact. We just we struggle with what the options might be.
All we would like to do is just move the staging area. It doesn't matter about it being on North East 85th Street, because at the end of the day, that's got to be done, and we appreciate that that's got to be done because it's for the better of the city. Where the staging area was just a residential area, and it's going through the night, It's crazy.
I
Absolutely
understand.
crazy.
We,
And that,
we will
that
definitely,
actually,
we could definitely explore
can
other
you,
staging
I mean,
areas.
there are businesses that are down on 85th Street that are not being used, that is vacant, and you're using the staging area with gravel and all the sort of things that you need to do, the pipes, everything to do with the road. And basically, it's not fair. You know, we bought these houses in the city thinking it's our dream home, we've worked hard for it, and then we awake every single night.
We're also paying property taxes.
Yes.
We will certainly look at the staging area issue. You need permission, and we've sought permission for all sorts of different places. We have multiple staging areas for this project. It's not just there. And again, it's a challenge. It's a challenge finding places to put things of this magnitude. So again, I know there's not much I can say. It is a huge impact on you guys, and I'm really sorry about that. But we're trying to fix it as soon as we can.
Is it on track?
Mostly, you know, that's a complicated question, but we think, I don't know, we've got some of our CIP folks here, but I think we're still on schedule. So, yes, that's what I'm hearing. But, and you can talk to them after as well if you want more details.
So I honestly believe that the city needs to step up to the plate on this more than they are. They need to have somebody watching these contractors, because if you go by these places, there's people standing there with a sign going, da, 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 and we got another shift to put in tonight, da, 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 and they don't really care about that. And until they feel some pain from the city, you're not going to change anything. So I think the city needs to have somebody tracking and saying, what are they doing here, how long are they out here, and what are they accomplishing tonight, instead of just letting them set their own timeline. I'm done. Thank you.
Appreciate that.
I'm assuming they get paid by the hour.
I have a question on ARC. At the CAN presentation that you made, we talked about the Totem Lake, the new developers and their interest in possibly partnering. And you said that that was probably not a possibility because they're on a fast track and the city can't react that fast. So can you give us some encouragement that there are other options out there that are actually being considered?
No, absolutely. So the conversations we've been having with the potential new owners of the mall, they're very interested in this being in and around the mall. So one of the things we're looking at is some of the other parcels that might be next to it. So for example, where the Cafe Veloce site is, or the bank site, or maybe the Carlton Inn, as potential locations where we might be able to partner with the mall ownership and create some sort of blended in aquatic center with the mall site. So we're very actively looking at those sites as options. We're also looking at some sites in Parmac. We're looking at some sites in and around the Kirkland Justice Center. So there's very definitely private sites that we are having conversations about. They won't be cheap, and that's one of the things we need to ask the community is, you know, is it worth $10 to $20 million to not be at the North Kirkland Community Center or Juanita Beach Park? And if the answer is yes, then you know that's a great answer. But we are absolutely exploring pretty aggressively alternative sites.
What would it take to not have it at Juanita Park? Because you'd be cutting down all those gorgeous trees. Across the street from Juanita Park is a beautiful area.
Right.
Used to be baseball. I don't know if it is anymore because my kids are grown. But I mean, we like our greenery. We all like parks. Why strip that beautiful land and put something that's going to cause more traffic than we even have on Juanita Drive? That's just a question.
Well, I think you're raising the same questions that we're hearing from a lot of residents. And we've sent out a survey to talk about that. But, you know, I could wax poetic about this as well. You know, we talked about building a fire station on Finn Hill. We had property at Big Finn Hill Park. We had property at the junior high. Those were publicly owned land. And the community said no. And as soon as you have to buy land for a fire station, it's a lot more expensive. And the same, so we feel like it's our obligation to at least fully explore all publicly owned properties first. And if the community says no, and they say we still want an ARC and we're willing to pay, you know, another $30 or $40 on our property tax bill, I think we're all in. But we're still going through the process and trying to be very thorough. I'm going to go back here.
Yeah, I have a question. What makes you think that the people in the city want to pay higher taxes for an ARC? My taxes went up $700 this year. I'm appealing it. It's never gone up that much. So if a school bond failed, the Lake Washington school bond failed, and the voters voted it down, why would the voters want to pay more taxes for an ARC?
Well, that's exactly what we're going to ask. So adding a recreation and aquatic center would be an additional level of service that the city does not provide at this time. If the Juanita pool ultimately closes, there will be no indoor swimming facility in Kirkland. So we think it's a legitimate question. We have been asked by the community for many years for a facility like this. And what we'll be crafting a ballot measure to say, are you interested in building such a facility, and are you willing to pay for it? Because it will be an added level of service over and above what we do now. And they may very well say no.
Because it was on TV last night. I can't remember which school district in like Shelton or down south where they closed the pool, and they were asking them why they closed their pool, and they said they don't have any money to take care of it. So once you build it, you still have to pay for it to maintain it. So if it's $50 million, you're looking at $2 million to maintain it. So it's higher taxes.
Right. Potentially.
So the short version is that at least all the assessments that we've done is if you do build a community recreation and aquatic center altogether, the revenues that you get from swimming lessons and the community activities and banquet rentals and all that more than pay for operations and set aside a healthy maintenance reserve. So if the voters were to choose to pay to build the facility, then the revenues that the facility would generate would more than pay for its maintenance and operation and upkeep. So that was a key question the City Council wanted to know the answer to, because they didn't want to build something that would then need to be subsidized. And we think there's a really healthy margin in there if it were to be built where it would pay for itself and then some.
That's what they told us about the 520 bridge when the first one was.
Yeah, has anybody considered we have a swimming pool in downtown Kirkland, putting a roof over it? That's the only problem is that it's outdoors. So
Yeah, we did take the interim step of adding a boiler. We did a boiler repair so it could be heated year round. We looked at that bubble thing. Yeah. What was that?
Yes.
But,
inflatable.
Yeah.
Inflatable, though.
Yeah, I think, I don't know the specifics of the building a building around it.
The challenge when we did look at that option, the City Council did ask us to look at that option. We actually ran into the same problem that Elaine mentioned, which is you could cover it, but a pool itself doesn't pay for itself. So eventually you would basically just be creating a larger subsidy from the city general fund if you had a year-round pool without the other facilities that help generate revenue. So it's a choice, but it's a choice that we've created the potential infrastructure, and we've created a boiler that would allow it to operate year-round, but we want to see what the community thinks about the ARC, and if the community says we're not interested in the ARC, that may be an option that comes back to be discussed.
The other thing I was wondering is about the STEM school. Does the STEM school have to be at Juanita High School? I mean, couldn't it be at Lake Washington High School? There's a perfectly good swimming pool there. It seems crazy to, again, tear that money down and tear all the money that's wasted when something that's functional is torn down.
So that's a question for the school board. The Lake Washington School District makes those decisions, and their strategic long-term planning came up with the STEM school going at Juanita, and they'll need that space where the pool is, and they have a lot of plans, and it's not really a city, something that we can definitely express your idea to them, but we're not the decision makers on that. Yes, ma'am.
I have one more question.
It's a good row right here.
I really liked a lot of your talk about partnerships. So what would be the problem then? Let's say if we couldn't get voter approval and we don't want our taxes to go up, why not present this to the people interested in Totem Lake? What a perfect option for them, guaranteed public use and maybe a combination of retail. The whole thing would work for everyone.
That's one of the issues that we're asking them about, and those conversations are ongoing because we think that is a great idea.
Just community I lived in, Salem, Oregon, had a similar issue a number of years ago, and they built a partnership between the city and the school district to co-join and manage some spaces that were used for both education and recreation.
Yeah, those conversations are on. We're trying to partner with anybody. Redmond, Bellevue, the district, Northwest University. The district had some land they would offer us, but it was on the pipeline. So
The gas pipeline.
apparently people have an issue with a swimming pool being built on a gas pipeline. I thought it was all right, but so they're still open to some kind of partnership, and those conversations are ongoing as well.
And I will say this in fairness to the school district, when in their original concept where the school was going to shut down the aquatic center, they actually had as much as $10 million available that they could use to replace a lake facility, and they were talking to us about making that investment in a partnership with the city. So they were contemplating bringing a significant amount of money to the discussion. When the ballot measure failed, unfortunately, they've had to reallocate that money to buy portables and other things, so it's not available anymore. But when the conversation started 2 years ago, it was a full partnership. We're still talking to them today about other potential partnerships, but that was their intent when they started.
Have you talked to Google? They seem to be spending lots of
we have talked to Google, and we'll keep talking to Google. What I'd say about Google is they're a remarkable partner, and when they decide they want to do something, they do it really, really well. But figuring out what they want to do is a really interesting conversation. So if they ever decide they wanted to, I know they'd be a great partner. But right now, they're not that interested in the pool itself, but they could change their mind. Yeah, we've talked to them. And we're going to keep talking, as the mayor said, to anyone.
Any money.
Yes,
Right?
yes.
Is there any consideration of doing a partnership with Kenmore with the St. Edward's swimming pool that was up there for so many years and was wonderful? I mean, we just need a place for the kids to learn how to swim that's indoors.
We have talked with them as well, and that's one of the sites that was looked at. It's a challenging site too. It's a little bit farther away, and it's also controlled by the state of Washington, and the state of Washington wasn't really interested in having a pool come back. So, everything has complications, but we did look at that, and we haven't immediately taken it off the list, but it doesn't look like it's that promising right now.
I wish. Yeah. That's right.
What was the problem with that?
The state of Washington wasn't interested in pursuing the pool there, and it's their property. But we're still working on them. I think we might have come to the end of our questions.
Right, so I have a question myself, and then I also have a question that a citizen who wasn't able to be here emailed in. So I'm going to start with my question, then I'll let you answer that and then come back to this other one, if that's okay. So I can't remember a year that we haven't said it's going to be a challenging year in Olympia in terms of the legislative session. I think this year takes the cake for all of it because of the McCleary and the whole financial issue. So my question is, can you give us some idea about where you see our legislative priorities for this legislative session, both things that we want to see happen and things that we're concerned could happen?
Yeah, maybe I can share some thoughts, my top three, and then Kirk can fill in everything else I forgot, the other 15. I think one of our main issues was that we wanted those ramps on 132nd added to the transportation package. Any transportation package that develops contains, finishing the 520 and a lot of major projects, and we felt that it was Kirkland's turn. And with Totem Lake happening, we need that 132nd, the other half of that interchange to be finished to support them all and all the economic development and the access from our new neighborhoods. So our meeting, all 7 of us were in Olympia last week. We met with all of our legislators. We had been working on Senator Hill specifically, but all of them talking about the 132nd. The Senate package does not have 132nd. He was going to look into it and let us know why it didn't make it, and he said it's not too late. So we've provided a lot of information to him about the economic development that Totem Lake would drive and why we need that, why it's so important to us. We were really interested in marijuana siting, fixing the marijuana siting issue. Kirkland has 2 licenses, and a lot of cities are having bans or moratoria or whatever. We're trying to work with the legislature around this idea of child care centers, 1,000-foot buffer around child care centers. So that has been very challenging for us. And capital projects. So these are our top 3. Capital projects, there's a capital budget process, and we submit our projects. We submitted 3 projects. Juanita Corridor Safety Improvements was one. Sidewalks on 52nd. Northeast 52nd, and the connecting the Cross Kirkland corridor with the Redmond connector with a sidewalk, which we thought would be a wonderful project. And strategically, we had one in the 1st, one in the 45th, and one in the 48th legislative districts. So we thought we were very smart to do that. So our legislators have signed on to all of our projects, and we were recently asked, what's your top 1? So that's a bit difficult, but I think Mr. Asher's going to lead us through that conversation upcoming. He's the chair of our legislative committee. So those are our top 3, but Kurt probably has some. We're always guarding our annexation sales tax credit. We're always guarding unfunded mandates from the state. We're always guarding against them sweeping other revenues from us. They've taken our share of liquor. They had their own difficult problems to solve, and unfortunately it kind of rolls downhill. So we have lost some revenue. So we're just constantly on a defense there. But we're very, very present. I want you to know that all of us show up. We talk to our legislators all the time. We text them, we email them, we call them. We show up in Olympia. We're there.
So, is there a way that we can help you, like AARP, when they're taking my Social Security money? They mail us all this thing and say, call this person, next this person, contact this person. Is there a way we as your citizens, can we set something up where we can find out what you need help with and we can help that way?
I like the way you think, Larry. I like it.
Grassroots is
interestingly enough, it's actually not allowed for a city to ask its citizens to advocate to the state legislature. It's legislation that was passed by the state legislature. So, but what you can do is you can go to our website and you can pick up our state legislative agenda, and you can communicate that to any of your legislators.
And our hot topics.
I would add one other thing that we're working on, which is Sound Transit is seeking additional revenue authority. So that they can go to the ballot. They've used all the revenue authority that they have. So one of the things that Kirkland has suggested is that if they get that new revenue authority, it needs to be more flexible. And one of the things we want to be able to do with it is use it to do things like complete regional trails that connect to the bus system and to light rail systems. Because we think that's sort of pennies on the dollar that can broaden a light rail line and touch lots of communities without having to spend $1 billion a mile. We're not getting a whole lot of love for that proposal by Sound Transit, which is kind of interesting, but we're getting some progress with the state legislature about it. We're trying to show them that that's one of the ways they can be more relevant to communities like Kirkland, is if they could actually find alternative ways to connect their transit system beyond just light rail or major bus through fares. And we think that would be a tool that would work for everybody, not just for Kirkland. So that's our last big item on the agenda that we've been working on.
And then the question from the citizen, I'm just going to read this verbatim. He asks, at the State of the City address, I suspect there may be questions from the audience regarding whether the City Council should pass an ordinance enabling the people to run initiatives and referendums in Kirkland. I would like to ask the mayor and city manager if they would support such an ordinance in Kirkland.
Well, I would certainly support looking into such an ordinance. This is a work plan item, I think, where we need to do some research on why our city has developed without that. What are the pros and cons? What other communities have it? So we just have some work to do. But I can't speak for our council members. We have not discussed this in an open public meeting, but I believe Mr. Nixon's planning on bringing it up on Tuesday night, so stay tuned. we have a full work plan, but I think that all of our council members want to have a decisive and responsive government, and maybe that's a piece of it for us in the future.
And for me, as with all ordinances, my opinion is whatever 4 council members or more tell me it is. So.
So please join us, please join me in thanking the mayor and city manager for, thank you for all your
Thank you very much for the hospitality. You're very gracious, and thank you, Bea, for inviting us.